What's up, everybody? Welcome to the How to Lead podcast, a conversation designed to help you develop yourself and those around you. My name's Adam, joined by Clay. Clay, if you could have dinner with one coach that's like actively coaching right now, who would you want to have dinner with?
Well, my first thought is Steve Kerr, because those, he's a Warriors coach. I know we're talking about, bosses being out, coaches being in, but
Yeah.
when I think coach, I still go to the sports world because that's
for sure
where that term is used most. But
yeah,
Steve Kerr, when they show those little compilation videos of him hyping up Steph Curry and getting in Steph Curry's ear, just being like, hey, you are one of a kind. There is nobody. It just reminds me of the power of having somebody in your corner that's just helping you out and giving you some encouragement. I think that's really important. But what about you? Who do you think of?
Oh, I'd have to say Dabo Sweeney, but I won't. I think who seems to be the most interesting coach out there right now would be the Boston Celtics coach. Watching clips
like
of him,
an angry elf.
Yes, and he has some really sharp thoughts. And,
he seems convicted about what he is doing.
That's right. And so, if nothing else, I think it would be funny to be there with him. Yeah. So we've been doing a bunch of episodes on coaching, and that just came to mind because, yeah, you're right. Bosses are out, coaches are in. That's where all the evidence seems to be pointing to. The coaches in the sports world are great examples, I think, of what this coaching mindset can be like, and how it really helps.
Can I ask you, when you think about, as we've talked about coaching, how do you think about it differently? Because as we just mentioned, it's so natural to put it in the sports world. But if it's true that we're going to try to become better professional coaches with the people, whether it's people we work with, people that work for us, or even learning how to be a coach, learning how to coach up, right?
Yeah.
How do you think about it differently than the sports world? Less suicides, obviously, not like, but like running up and down the court.
On the basketball court type
right?
things. For me, I guess what's coming to mind is like it's a little less focused. This is going to take some nuance, but a little less focused on outcomes and more focused on the person.
Good, yeah.
But in a weird way, by focusing on the person, you get the outcomes that you desire. So obviously, the Boston Celtics coach and
they got quite an outcome that they're going for, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
if they're not winning,
exactly,
they're not winning. Nobody cares.
Right.
But because they're winning, it certainly makes them intriguing. But I think that piece about where it translates over is a little bit different, is that we're just focused on this relationship and how we can develop this person and leave them better than we found them.
Yeah. If I could make one change in the way I thought about coaching and even still think about coaching, which is why this episode today, I hope, will be really helpful for people. I think the biggest mistake people make when it comes to coaching is they feel like, I'm here to give advice.
That's right.
I'm here to advise you. And what we're going to talk about today, a great coach gives way less advice and asks way more questions.
That's right.
That really is the key. I think it is the key, the biggest shift that's got to happen in becoming a better coach.
Yeah. And that is where the analogy between sports and a lot of times what we're dealing with in the marketplace breaks down, because the coach on the basketball court, baseball diamond, football field, they have a game plan. They have something in there. They have the answers, and they're trying to show you, here's how we're going to get to what it is that we want. Where a lot of times out there in the business world, we don't know what the answers are.
Right.
We're just trying to develop and coach and lead somebody along the way. So yes, I hope that just that statement, like if you're already going to turn this episode off, like you already got to work or you're already at home after walking the dog, here's the pressure relieving statement that great coaching oftentimes is not what you say, like the advice that you give, it's the questions you ask. And what we're going to do today is give you 3 really great questions that we believe every coach should ask. So these are ones to keep in your hip pocket. You can use them. They're durable. They're usable in a whole bunch of different situations. And I'm excited to go through with this. Clay, you just want to give a quick preview on what the 3 questions are, and then we'll unpack each one?
Sure. And before I even give the preview, I still am curious how much convincing needs to take place with people on that shift. Most people understand the power of a good question, but I just don't know how much we've seen it in action or how much we've experienced it personally. Is there much convincing that needs to, or do you think most people agree? Yeah. Ask people the right question.
Well, I think there's going to be, I don't think there's going to take much mental convincing. I think we can all listen to that and logically go, sure. The hard part is the behavior change, because
Yeah,
we
that's
all
right.
love to
Oh,
tell,
yeah,
but we hate being told.
yeah,
And we
that's
just forget
that's
what it's
right.
like
That's right.
to do that. And
Yeah.
so it is so easy. Again, the hardest part, for some reason, I think about one of the hardest things about coaching is that it's awkward and inconvenient. It's like when your kids act up when you're at Target. It's a very inconvenient time to discipline them. It's rarely convenient, and coaching is the same way. And I'm not saying that the people we're coaching are like our kids, but it just seems to be inconvenient. So I think the default for busy leaders is going to be, let me just tell you,
Yeah, let me just tell you what
not
to do.
take time to
Right.
ask questions, because that
Right.
takes time to do it. So
It does.
yeah.
It is a slower way, but it certainly is a better way. Here are the 3 questions that we're going to just give you to keep in your back pocket. Obviously, there's way more questions than this, but I love the way you put it, that they're durable, they are repeatable. You can use them over and over again, and I think they help the person explore what's really going on. Here they are. Number 1, and what else? That's the question, Adam.
That
That's
is
it.
it.
And
That's
what else, right?
That's good.
Because it encourages deeper thinking. It pushes somebody into deeper thinking. The second one is, what advice would you give someone in your situation? I ask this one almost every time I'm on the phone with someone in a coaching context. I say, hey, let's say somebody came to you and was in they described a situation that's eerily similar to yours. What advice would you give them? What would you tell them, right?
Yeah.
Because it allows them to tap into their own wisdom, which is really one of the best things they could tap into. And then number 3, what is the real challenge here for you? What's the real challenge here for you, right? I love asking that as somebody talks about, hey, I got this coworker, I got this problem, I got this thing. What's the real challenge for you? It just pushes them to get to the heart of the issue, right?
That's right.
It pushes them to get underneath the superficial issue. We all know, usually it's not about this, usually it's about that, but pushing them with that question, what's the real challenge here for you, helps them get into it.
Yeah, I love these questions. Again, they're going to be easy to remember, and you're going to find opportunities to use them almost right away. Let's unpack a few of these and give an example. Let's start with that first one, because that's the strangest one to go, all right, now how am I going to use that? And what else? Why does that one work?
Yeah, it works specifically for somebody with my temperament, Adam, which is probably why I like this question so much, because I'm not a deep thinker. I am not somebody who has sat around for hours and hours and hours thinking about this, and I brought my deepest answer. No, because I'm living life usually I don't mean at a superficial level in a negative way. I just mean I'm just living with what's coming up next, and where are we here, and taking things at face value. And I, just like most people, I tend to give the first and the easiest answer, but it's not always the best answer. And so this question, it just creates some space for deeper reflection.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I like that. And you and I were joking around on text recently, like, sometimes for a lot of people, their strategy is wake up and wing it. And so
Right.
they just got to wake up and they're winging it. But so that's really good to keep in mind for us as a coach, is to go, okay, so this person's coming to me with an issue. They've got something that they want to talk about. Chances are they're coming to me because they feel something, but they haven't quite reflected on it yet.
Yep.
So one of the best ways I
Yep.
can serve them, and this will stop you from jumping in with advice, because you probably have an answer, you probably have something you can do, is just, rather than just sitting there in silence and awkwardly staring at them so that they'll maybe say more, is just going, okay, so after they explain the situation, going, okay, and what else? And that's just going to put the ball back in their court, and then they're going to get to go one level deeper. And so I think it's great. So give a quick example there, Clay, of like a little role play, like what that would look like.
Yeah, this happened to me maybe a week or 2 ago. I was on the phone with a leader who I said, hey, what's bothering you today? What are you spending all your time thinking about? And she said, I've got this issue with a person that works for me. She said, I thought about this in light of our conversation today. I thought this might be worth talking about, because it's the thing that's occupying most of my space. I have a person that works for me that whenever I'm around this person, I'm just always in my head. And I don't know, she's just hard to work with, and I can't figure her out. I just find myself in my head. And I said, well, what do you think the issue is? And she says, well, I just think it's the way she's wired. And she just this, and this is her challenge, whatever. And I said, and what else, right? What else is the challenge here? What else is the issue here? And that, it was, in a way, to your point, it forced me to go, don't give an answer quickly,
Nice.
right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a governor on my own interest in giving some advice.
That's right.
Then when I asked that, I gave it some space, and she goes, yeah, I guess it probably says something about me. and my own insecurity,
That's
right?
good.
And I thought, okay, now here we go, right?
Yeah.
Now we're getting into
Game on.
the real opportunity to change, because we all know the reality of that relationship is you're not going to change the other person, right? And if you spend all your time and energy and focus trying to do that, it's just a waste of time. But what you can change, what you obviously have the most agency over, is what is it in me that feels insecure? Do I feel like I have imposter syndrome, or do I feel inferior to this person? And is that actually true? And what should I do about that? And what do I need to tell myself, right? That led us to the part of the conversation that I feel like was the most rich. And so I feel like the key is to ask it with curiosity, not interrogation, right? You're not grilling them.
No.
This isn't a press conference, but you're inviting them to think more deeply.
Yeah, and that's really key. It's not like, it can't be the tone, and what else are you not telling me, right? Because that's going to come across as, you think you've got an answer. You know, one of the worst questions, or my least favorite type of question when people ask me, is you can tell when they ask the question, they have the answer.
Yes.
And then they just kind of float around it. I used to have a golf coach that would do that. It would be like, we'd be talking about something and he'd be like, let me ask you this, Adam, what do you think is the average percentage of putts made inside 30 feet in the PGA, on the PGA
You're like,
Tour?
I'm guessing this is not just because you're curious, right?
And I go, I don't know. And he goes, well, no, take a guess. And I'm like, this is a lose-lose. My guess is going to be wrong.
Right.
So
if I get it right, I steal your thunder. If I get it wrong, I look like an idiot. I don't like either option.
It's a lose-lose. So
that's right.
So I like that. The genuine curiosity. Okay, what else? What else is there? I bet there's some more. Another one is like, it's not a question, but it invites it, is say more.
Yeah, tell me
say
more.
more about that. Tell me more about that. I think that one's all really good. Okay, let's go on to the second one.
Question number 2.
Yeah, what advice would you give to somebody in your situation? And you have a story that goes with this one, because this one really was an unlock for you in a coaching call or meeting that you had in the past few years, right?
Yeah, the thing I love about this question is to what you said earlier, that we love telling people what to do, but we all hate being told what to do, right? We are at our best when we are following advice that we are convinced of, right? Even advice that we believe ourselves, or maybe even that came from ourselves. We all have an ego. We all love our own ideas, right? So I was on a coaching call. This is back probably 5 or 6 years ago, when I had a coach for a couple of years, and we had a great relationship, and he's tremendous at what he does. And I was really struggling in my job where I was employed at the time, trying to figure out, do I need to stay? Do I need to go? Why am I experiencing so much professional restlessness? And he said, well, you seem almost afraid to quit. Is that accurate? And I said, I'm not afraid to quit. I said,
afraid?
That's right. Don't call me afraid. He said, well, what bothers you about quitting? I said, nothing bothers me about it, but it really bothers my dad. And he's like, oh, what do you mean? I was like,
say more.
He was like, and what else, right? I mean, that's like really getting into a sensitive spot whenever somebody mentions their father wound, right? But my dad's tremendous. I mean, he's a wonderful person, but his highest character quality is, you stick to it. You stay with it. You stay faithful. You do not quit, right? And he said, what did your dad do? I said, he worked in the same job for 40 years. He said, was there ever a moment where it wasn't good for him? Was there a season where he probably should have left? And I said, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, there was. I mean, when I was a teenager at this time, he had worked at this place for probably 25 years, and about 2/3 of the way into his career, and I could tell things started going south a little bit, and he was more grumpy about it. He was leaking a little more about it, more frustrated about it. He said, if you could go back, what advice would you give your dad in that situation? Right? I mean, that's a version of what advice would you give to someone in your similar situation? Because he led me to the point where I actually identified someone who was in a similar situation. And then he had me advise that person. Yeah. I said, I know exactly what I would say to him. I would say, hey, you only know what you see. You only see what's right in front of you. You don't know. You're afraid. Truthfully, there's a fear that you're afraid of what's on the other side, because in your mind, it's going to be worse. I mean, he's a real like, hey, be grateful where you are, bloom where you're planted kind of person. And I'm like, you've been there 25 years. You've been faithful. You've done a great job there. But maybe there's something on the other side that's better. It might not be better, but it might be better. But the truth is, you're going to learn something and you're going to grow. There's an opportunity on the other side that's going to unlock something in you. I mean, and I was probably like 60 seconds in, and I was like, you dirty dog. You got me. You got me. Right. I was like, wow, it really was. It was like a Jedi mind trick, right? Of him
Yes.
going, oh, he just led me to the point where I was giving myself the actual advice that I needed.
That is so good. Like, and that's what I love about this question, because especially if you ask somebody like, what do you do? And they go, I don't know. Asking this question helps them realize, guess what? You actually do know.
You
And
do know.
I think about it as it's like this outside looking in question. It gets you outside of
It
yourself.
does.
Yes. It makes you look at it, because I can always solve somebody else's problem way
so much
faster
easier
than I can solve mine.
I got so many opinions. I mean, Adam, you remember this when we were younger and we worked in that, around college ministry or student ministry. I remember when parents would come and ask my advice. I'm 28 years old. I don't know anything about raising kids. And I would be like, you're so dumb that you need my advice, right?
Yeah.
But I was so dumb that I would actually give it, because I had opinions. I had thoughts, right? Because you're right. It's so much easier to solve someone else's problem. But when you have a team member who's struggling with a coworker and you ask them, hey, if somebody was struggling with you, what would you want them to do, right? It turns it around. What advice would you give somebody who's in a similar situation to yours?
Yeah. So again, look at the theme between these first two questions. We're trying to slow down the amount of advice that we give. So again, this is where it's different than the basketball coach on the sidelines. See it, say it. There's and we talked about that in previous episodes. There are times to see it and to say it. And then there are times to shut your mouth.
Yeah.
Just ask some questions.
Yeah.
And get the other person thinking. Both of them are appropriate. Both of them are coaching. And I love that we're talking about this. All right, let's talk about this last one here. Question number 3. What's the real challenge for you here? Talk about that one and why that one worked.
Yeah, and you really got to accentuate real, right?
Yeah.
Because what you're obviously insinuating, which you have to be careful of, because there is an assumption that is in this, right? Which that's always dangerous. But the assumption is that you're explaining challenges, or you're talking about things that aren't actually the real issue. Mm-hmm. I love the way I made myself say actually right there, like I'm a teenager. What's actually the real issue, right? That's the way, like, our 13-year-old daughter talks that way. But it's helpful because we all focus on surface level problems instead of the real issue. And this question forces clarity. It forces us to get underneath, right? And to really try to identify what is truly getting in the way for you, right? Yep. And when we do that, you can't solve a problem that you haven't identified. And it allows us to identify the real issue. It allows for deeper exploration to identify the thing that's really in the way. And that is so helpful.
Yeah, I remember back in the day, there was some advice that was given to young married couples, and it was talked about the difference between events and issues. And they used basically an iceberg analogy, that what you see above the surface is the event, right? Somebody came home late, somebody didn't make a phone call, somebody forgot to stop by the grocery store. But the issue is below the surface. That means you don't care about me. That means you're being selfish. That means you're neglecting me. And it's one of those principles that I've never forgotten about, because it doesn't just apply to marriage, it applies to all relationships. And that's what I love about this question, because a lot of times what people who we're coaching, they're going to come to us with an event. This happened. We're late. This is here. And asking them to go, so what's the real challenge is really trying to go, so what does this event mean? Like, why is this really bothering you?
That's right.
Because the emotional reaction to the event may not match, because it means something different to them below the surface. And so I really, really like this question. I think this is the one that can really yield a lot of things that you can get after and talk about that are incredibly helpful for people.
Well, you mentioned marriage, Adam, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to use their marriage as a petri dish for some of your coaching, right? Not your spouse does not want you to be a coach. But there obviously are moments where we need to shut up, not give an answer, and ask a question, right? Last week I was out of town, had a couple speaking engagements back to back, and my wife was just beside herself. There was a real cold snap in America last week, and she was so frustrated because our varsity soccer player, 10th grade daughter, the other school canceled the game because it was so cold.
Okay.
But the coach said, well, that's fine. We're going to practice anyway. And my wife was just, the mother bear in her, the mother hen in her was just raging. She was so frustrated. What in the world would they do? The game's been canceled, but you're going to make these girls be out in the cold, and they're all going to get sick and pneumonia, and how dare you, right? Frostbite, hypothermia. They're going to have to be cutting off legs.
It's 22 degrees.
And it was.
Nobody can survive in that.
That's right. I think it was 22 degrees, something like that. She had been texting me all day about it, and I was trying to be loving and kind and compassionate. But we get on the phone later that day, and fortunately, I was able to ask her this question. I was like, hey, what do you think the real challenge is for you here?
Yeah.
And she was like, you think I'm spending too much energy on this? And I was like, I'm not saying that.
I'm nervous right now as to where this goes. Yeah.
But I asked it. I was like, hey, what do you think's really underneath all this? And she was like, I need to think about that. She's like, there's something more here. This isn't just about the cold, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I that's where I'm like, oh gosh, no, I'm not saying that.
No.
Maybe though, if that's what you think. But anyway, that question in our marriage was a really helpful opportunity for some personal exploration.
It does, yeah. And that may happen, right? You may ask somebody that and they go, hey, I don't know. And that's totally fine. We don't have to solve that problem right now. Because if we take this long-term view of coaching, it's not about just getting this person out of my office or out of my cube right now. It's what is going to help them develop so that we can achieve outcomes and they're going to be better and all that kind of stuff. So I love it. I love these 3 questions. I think these are easy to remember. They're durable. You can use them in different situations. And it's not like they don't follow a logical order. So you don't have to start with what else and then go to what advice. It's just use them whenever you feel necessary. I think all of them, what they do for us as coaches is it gets us to resist that urge to give advice, gets us listening, gets us asking questions. And I am shocked at sometimes, you and I do coaching professionally, right? So that's part of our job. It's what we get paid to do at times. And I'm shocked at some of those times at the end of a coaching session that a coachee will go, this was phenomenal. Thank you. And I said very little. All I did was ask questions because it just shows the power of this. And so why don't you just recap those 3 questions one more time, Clay, and give everybody a call to action and we'll be done.
Yeah, let's recap. Coaching isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions. So here's 3 questions you can use this week. Number 1, and what else? Number 2, what advice would you give someone in your situation? And then number 3, what's the real challenge here for you? I'm telling you, try it out. Try them on. Convince yourself that this person does not want to be told what to do, but your job as a coach is to help lead them to some personal exploration where they might bump into the advice that they really do need to give themselves. So give it a try.
All right. Clay, as always, great to be with you.
Thanks, Ed.
Well, that's all we got for today's episode of the How to Lead podcast. You can always reach out to us via email. We can be reached at info@howtolead.work. That's info@howtolead.work. Every episode is mixed and edited by the team over at Sound of a Rose. You can learn more about them at soundofarose.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.